talking about some social tensions. It's not like we haven't seen over generations protests at universities, but there is an element to some of these protests in the United States right now and elsewhere, but certainly if you look at Colombia, the impact on the Jewish population and so on in New York and those affected at the campus, there's some worrying elements to this in relation to anti-Semitism and so on.
Yeah, I mean, look, these protests are nakedly anti-Semitic, Kieran. I don't really know how you can say it any more clearly than that. We've seen scenes at places like Yale University where Jewish students were physically stopped, restrained from entering the campus, from moving around freely, where Passover Shabbat dinners have had to be moved for fear of their safety, like it's 1938 Germany. I mean, this is just, this goes well beyond any sort of sense of free speech, I think, on this. And a lot of what's being pushed here...
We've got these pictures, actually. Just to interrupt, I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to tell our viewers, that's University of Southern California right there in Los Angeles, a big police presence right now. Just going to the issue that James and I are talking about. James, sorry to carry on, please.
No. Look, I mean, the thing is, too, you go back and you look, and we're going to be talking a lot about this on the U.S. report tomorrow at 8, but an awful lot of the demonstrations are really not just, saying, we want peace for Gaza, we want to support the Palestinian people. They're really saying, people have signs saying, supporting the Qassam Brigades and Hamas and, calling on the actual elimination of the state of Israel, not just a two-state solution. It's virulently anti-Semitic, but also virulently anti-Western. The big concern I have, Kieran, is what is being taught in these schools, in these universities, that this is where the students are. I mean, I guess we've sort of been here in the past. We've seen other sorts of demonstrations before, but I will say it's ironic that, 5 years ago, these same students that were, saying, these same sort of students who were saying, oh, well, if you wear a sombrero to a Halloween party, that's worth canceling for the rest of your life, are now saying, if you are visibly Jewish, we're going to forbid you from campus. So much for all of that tolerance and diversity of the left, Kieran.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right in relation to a lot of the sentiment we're seeing. In terms of the political impact, can I ask you about the presidential race? Because you look at these protests and an element of the student population, a younger population, really with quite hardline views when it comes to the Middle East. It doesn't necessarily, if we just talk in, the political sum of this, it doesn't mean it's a big win for Joe Biden, because a lot of these individuals would be very critical of the way the Biden administration has not, for example, endorsed Palestinian statehood at the UN, for example.
Well, yeah, I mean, in fact, this is a huge problem. The Democrats have two problems. Number one, sort of like a bigger version of what Labor has to deal with in Australia. Number one, the Muslim vote, especially in states like Michigan, where they're quite critical, is quite upset that the Biden administration has any support at all for Israel. And I think Biden, historically, in his career, has been kind of an old school Democrat where there was at least a tacit amount of support for Israel. But the new generation, they really want to see Israel fail. They want to see it fall. A lot of these demonstrators were saying cheered on the October 7th massacres, as ghoulish and grisly as that is to say. They're furious at Biden. They'll stay home. They won't vote for Joe Biden. They might not vote for Trump either. But in a country like America, where turnout is key and where the Democrats have always had these huge get-out-the-vote efforts among young people, my sources are telling me that they're really wary of going and knocking on doors on campus and saying, hey, come on, vote Democrats, because they're going to cop an earful about Palestine.
And let's look at something else I flagged earlier, and that is the Trump hush money trial. What's your take on that? What are the implications of this as it's unfolding and the potential for this to cause trouble for the presumptive Republican nominee?
I think the Trump trial on this whole hush money thing, this is basically like a fairy tale that the left and the Trump derangement syndrome people tell themselves, about how they're going to finally get the orange man. I don't think it has a lot of difference or makes a lot of difference, because I think most people here are looking at this and they're like, so Trump, who never put himself out there as kind of this arbiter of morality or anything like that, has maybe tried to cover up an affair, big deal. I mean, Bill Clinton, if you've got a long enough memory on this sort of thing, you know, they called them bimbo eruptions during the 1992 campaign, and they were constantly squelching rumors and claims that Bill Clinton had affairs with this woman or that woman and everything like that. And people like George Stephanopoulos is now a big-time media contributor in the U.S. He cut his teeth on the Clinton campaign doing precisely what Trump is accused of. And I mean, more recently, this idea of, you know, using money to influence things one way or the other. Well, the Hillary campaign settled for, I think, $120,000, a claim that they used their own campaign money to pay for the Steele dossier, which started the Russia hoax, which was arguably a much bigger interference in American electoral processes. So this case is so confected. It's a misdemeanor at most that they've spun into 34, I think, felony charges. Now, of course, it's a New York courtroom, and the judge seems to have it in for Trump, and the jury probably does too. So kind of anything is possible as far as that's concerned. But politically, I don't think that it really does a lot to Trump.
James Morrow, appreciate it. I look forward to the US report tomorrow night, as always. Thanks.
See you, Kieran.